Hey everyone, welcome to this section on subtraction. In our previous section, we learned all about addition where we added 1, 2, 3, and 4-digit numbers. In this section, we will be exploring the topic of subtraction, which is the opposite of addition, and you'll see that as we go through the many problems we will be solving. We're going to start by subtracting 1 and 2-digit numbers, followed by subtracting 3 and 4-digit numbers so that you can have a good understanding of subtraction and be able to solve any problems you may encounter. If at any moment there is something you don't understand or you have any questions, you can always rewatch the video or you can send me an email and I'd be glad to assist you to the best of my abilities. Let's get started by learning how to subtract 1 and 2-digit numbers. For our first problem, let's take a look at 4 minus 2. Now, this is what is referred to as subtraction. Instead of adding these two numbers together and seeing how much we have in total, we want to find the difference by subtracting. And just as we did in our previous section in addition, where I used my pencils to show you visually how addition works, I want to use them again here to show you how subtraction works. So, for our first set of numbers, we have 4, and we want to subtract 2 or take away 2. So we simply subtract 2 pencils or we take away 2 pencils and it gives us our final answer, which is 2. I know that was a bit fast. I just wanted to give you a quick demonstration of what happens when you hear someone say minus or take away. But don't worry, in this section, we're going to be doing plenty of problems so that you can understand exactly what's going on. For our next problem, let's take a look at 7 minus 4. Again, let's bring 7 pencils out so that you can understand visually what's happening when you subtract 4 from 7. Here, we have 7 pencils and we want to take away 4, so we simply count 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we simply count what's left, and that's our answer, which is 3. For our next problem, let's take a look at 16 minus 5. I'm sure you noticed we went from subtracting single-digit numbers to now our first double-digit number. But don't let that worry you, the same rules still apply. Things only change slightly, which, if you've seen the previous section in addition, you already know what those changes are. But if you don't, it's okay, you'll learn them now. So let's see how we solve this problem. The first thing we want to do is work from the right column to the left. So let's go to our first column on the right where we have 6 minus 5. I want to show you visually what it looks like with my pencil so you can fully understand what it means to subtract, which simply means to take away or eliminate. So here we have 6 pencils and we want to subtract 5. We simply count or take away 5 pencils to get our answer. So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5 we just counted is what we take away, and what we have left is our answer, which is 1. Now, we move to our next column on the left where we only have a 1, and when we have a single digit by itself at the end of a problem, you simply carry it down and we get our final answer, which is 11. We're making great progress so far. Let's continue. For our next problem, let's take a look at 20 minus 7. If you notice, here in our right column, for the first time, we have a smaller number on top, which is 0, and a bigger number on the bottom, which is 7. In our last section, in addition, we learned that you can just add these two numbers and get your total. But in subtraction, it's different. You have to do what's called borrowing. Borrowing is when you simply borrow from the next column to the left, which in this case it's the 2, and combine it with the number on the right, which in this case is 0. So let's see how we can solve this. Just as we did in every problem we previously solved, we come to the right column and say 0 minus 7. We can't do that because 7 is bigger and you can't subtract a bigger number from a smaller number. So we come to the next column on the left where we have the number 2. We borrow from our 2, where we immediately put a line over it so that we know it's no longer a 2, and we put a 1 right next to it so that we know that we have a 1. If that's a bit confusing, please don't worry. We'll be doing this several times so that you understand exactly what we are doing when we borrow. So now that we borrowed 1 from our 2, we can now place that 1 here next to the number in our first column, which is 0, and it becomes a 10. And now we can say 10 minus 7 is going to equal 3. For our last step, we move on to the column on the right where we have 1 by itself, and we can just carry it down and we get our final answer, which is 13. I know that may be a bit to take in at once, but let's do another problem so that you can get the hang of this and understand exactly what's going on. For our next problem, let's take a look at 31 minus 23. The first thing we want to do is come to the column on the right as we did in our last problem and say 1 minus 3. You can't subtract a smaller number from a bigger number, so we do the following. We come to the column on the left where we have a 3 and borrow 1. Immediately, you want to place a line over the number you are borrowing from so you can be aware that it no longer has its original value, and since we only need to borrow 1, our 3 becomes a 2, since 3 minus 1 is 2. And the 1 we borrowed goes to the first column on the right where it's needed, and our 1 becomes an 11. And now we say 11 minus 3. I'm going to illustrate this with blue circles so you can pause the video if you like and count them, and you see that when you take away 3 from 11, you get 8. Now, we go to our next column where we have 2 minus 2, which is going to give us 0, and our final answer is 8. For our next problem, let's take a look at 94 minus 68. The numbers are starting to get a little bigger, but don't let that worry you. The same rules still apply. So just as we did in previous problem, let's come to our first column on the right where we have 4 minus 8. 4 is smaller than 8, and as we said before, you can't subtract a smaller number from a bigger number, so we have to borrow from our 9 in the next column. We want to put a line over it, and since we only need to borrow 1, it becomes an 8. And the 1 we borrowed, we place it in front of our 4, and it becomes 14. Now, we can say 14 minus 8, which is going to give us 6. For our last step to solve this problem, we move on to our next column where we have 8 minus 6, which is going to give us 2. And we have our final answer, which is 26. Great. This is going to conclude this video on subtracting 1 and 2 digit numbers. In our next video, we're going to subtract 3 and 4 digit numbers. I look forward to seeing you there.